Hey guys, it's Murs. Welcome back to Harpies in the Trees, where I review horror books with a supernatural focus. You might see in the background there that I have a book cart, a Buchwagen, a TBR cart. I've been wanting one for so long, like you have no idea. So I've stacked all of the books in there that I want to read, and it just feels good to get them out of my bookshelf because my bookshelf is, you know, my bookshelf, it's pretty small. So there's not a lot of room in there. This is gonna give me a lot more room. And also I get to keep my TBR stack right in my face, which is very good for me because the way that my brain operates is out of sight, out of mind. So today I'm gonna be sharing with you my best reads for 2021. Now these are the reads that, you know, they've stuck with me. I think about them all the time. They come up in many different discussions, and I'm also gushing about them nonstop. So these are the books that I'm just gonna go over with you guys. But also, if you want to see a focused review for these books, I have a book review video for each and every single one of these. You can just check out my horror book reviews. But before we get into that, I want to go over your guys' answers for what character would you like to battle Krampus? And I asked this on my Krampus book tag, and you guys gave some amazing answers. I just want to go over those. Michelle's Tribe says the monster from The Ritual to battle Krampus. That's pretty good. They're both pagan. They're both pretty ancient. That would be, I think, a feast for the eyes because I feel like there'd be a lot of posturing, you know, and it would be pretty entertaining to watch. Kathy K says, I'd love to see Dumbledore battle Krampus. That's a very interesting pick. I'd like to see the Santa Claus Santa, played by Tim Allen, fight Krampus. But on a serious note, she chose Pumpkinhead. That is very awesome. I mean, I feel like Pumpkinhead is just extremely scary and extremely spooky. I mean, he might even scare Krampus off, you know? Robert JMJ says, I'd like to see Krampus fight Ash from Evil Dead. That is a really good one. Vanessa says, I would love to see the alien from Alien versus Predator battle Krampus. That's such a crazy combination because I feel like Pumpkinhead, the alien is just extremely terrifying. Like, it is beyond this world. And to place it with Krampus, who's this old world, pagan, ancient earth thing, you know, with this outer extraterrestrial monster, it almost gives me a little bit of anxiety because I feel like Krampus doesn't have a chance. Anthony Wheeler says, I would like to see Krampus fight Godzilla, but if Krampus was bigger. Just imagine a giant Krampus fighting Godzilla in Santa Claus's North Pole with elves running around screaming and/or fighting in toy tanks and jets. There's a Stephen King short story that is about this guy who finds this box that has like a whole entire miniature army in it. And it's in the Night Shift book. And the story to me was like, it was a little boring. I wasn't too into it, but I thought the concept was really fun. It also made me think of Cat's Eye, just like these really tiny miniatures that have to battle life-size creatures. Bernard Mulligan says Freddy and Chucky. Freddy doesn't want Krampus moving in on his children, and Chucky is a toy, and I feel like gives him a strong advantage during Christmas. Absolutely. I mean, Chucky could like hide anywhere and completely just wait for Krampus to be sneaking around. Thank you guys so much for sharing. I feel like there's a lot of fan art here that could be made. Okay, so we have a stack of books to get through, so let's start. I've read so many good books this year. I'm really picky about the books that I choose to read because I don't have a lot of money to just buy a bunch of books. So there will be books that I'm going to be talking about today that will be excluding books that you probably might think I will be talking about but didn't bring up. But it's not because I don't think they were good reads for this year. I'm just really wanted to kind of trim this down to like the books that live in my mind rent-free all the time. You know, the ones that come up constantly, the ones that I'm always gushing about, the ones that I'm always doing, you know, little like creative TikToks about, or Instagram or whatever, just sort of focusing my energies on the inspiration that these books have given me. So that is what we will be talking about today. So one of the books that's actually not on my stack because I don't have a physical copy of it is Adam Neville's Cunning Folk. One of the reasons why I loved Cunning Folk was I loved the psychological breakdown of the main character. The father character who's kind of losing it because nobody is sort of experiencing what he's experiencing. Everyone is turning against him. He is alone completely in this fight. He is progressing by understanding what's happening, but also being pulled back continuously, questioning his sanity, questioning everything. And it was done so well in the book that you just spiral with him. You know, like sometimes you're even like, yeah, is that even happening? He was really this character who was just fumbling in the dark, and it was just expressed so well. One of the other things that I really liked about the book was the violence. And the violence was a bit comical. Comical, but so satisfying because we have these neighbors who, everyone's had a horrible neighbor who just every time you interact with them, it is stress, there's a problem, and it's always you, you know, and you know, if you could just like pop off their head. We've all had fantasies of, you know, what we would do to these people if we could, you know, but of course we wouldn't. I hope. James Herbert's Ghosts of Sleeth. Now, this is my very first James Herbert book I've ever read. Yes, it is the only one that I have read at the moment. I truly love this. There's this one scene in this book that just really sticks with me. I did like the characters, I liked the story, I think it was like wonderfully supernatural, and I liked the setting. All of the settings were very spooky, you know, kind of like a lot of rundown places, a lot of ruins, a lot of, you know, homes with secrets and stuff, and I really liked that, and I liked how it was this village. So Ash is like hired by some type of like occult or supernatural society to come and check out this town and see if it's actually haunted and like what's going on there. He's kind of meeting with people to see what activity is going on because the activity is supposedly like the whole town is experiencing it. Everybody is experiencing it. So it's this wide phenomena. And of course, this is very interesting to the society, so what's going on? So Ash heads over to this house. He meets with this woman. She's very distraught. She has lost her son, so she's still in this period of grieving. She tells him that the father is still abusing the son as ghosts in the afterlife, playing out in the house. And there's a lot of activity that goes on. There's a lot of things that happen. And it was just a scene that really stuck out to me. And it just lives with me. I feel like I can see this house in my mind, you know, and it's kind of dark and in ruins, which in the book, I don't think it's in ruins, but like in my mind, it's like that. It was very spooky. The next one that I really liked was Blood and Bone by Nora Ash. This is really cool. Nora actually reached out to me, wanted to send this to me. And this is actually about zombies. You know that I do not like zombies, but this story was a little more than zombies. And the zombies were sort of a part of the background. They were in the environment, but they weren't like the main thing. So what stood out for me in this was the ruin porn. The ruin porn was great. It was perfect. It was Fallout 4 kind of ruin porn for me. I really enjoyed it. I felt like I could just really get lost in this world, and it was very enjoyable. I also liked how there was so many layers to the story. So it wasn't just, you know, one linear story. It was like there's a lot going on here. There are mysteries to be solved, and it's a dangerous place. That's what makes me want to go back to it. You know, like I will probably read this again, like all of these books that I'll be talking to you about today. I'll probably read them again at some point. The The next one was A House of a Hundred Whispers by Graham Masterton. Also, this is my first Graham Masterton book. So a lot of firsts for me this year. There are really great characters in here that feel very solid. Like, it feels like Graham Masterton really had in mind who these people were, and so they felt like those people. But there were a few that stood out as being kind of extraordinarily interesting. And there's a priest, and there's like a, I don't know if he was like a warlock, maybe. These two characters stood out to me the most and were just really striking and interesting, and I loved hanging out with them. The priest was this very friendly character who wanted to be really helpful to this family. He was also very educated in the academics of theology and all of that stuff. So he was just a wealth of amazing information. The warlock was also a wellspring of information about pagan rites, about pagan practices, theories, about magic. And these two characters did not try to interfere with the other one. Both of them have the goal of helping this family. And and there are things that happen that were very shocking, but I can't tell you what those were because I ruined the story for you. But let's just say that I was very invested in these two characters. The tone of this book was very, very serious. And the tone of the ending was a bit comical to me, so it didn't really make sense to me. I really did not like it that much. It kind of has like two endings, sort of like, you have like the conclusion of like the story and then like what is sort of happening afterwards, which I thought was totally fine. I liked that a lot, but it was just that part where I was like, really? This just like kind of out of nowhere. It was just so comical, but regardless, it's cool. The next one that I really liked was this novella by Jason Robert Ducharme, Come Forth in Thaw. I thought this was very cool. It had these surreal moments in it. You don't really know what's happening and what's going on until the very end. It gives you clues in ways that were just visually fantastic to me and just intriguing. So I loved the story, and the story is about a woman who is looking for her son, who has gone into this forest to unalive himself. So she's desperate to find him, and we go with her on that journey. And it's sort of surreal, sort of abstract, it's a little dreamy, and it just has this really cool feel to it. There is a part in the story where she like goes down this tunnel and she finds something in there, and it was fantastic. I remember at that point when I read it, I was like, whoa, what does this mean? What are you saying? Because it's a very dark story. It's a very sad story. It's not something that we haven't seen before, but I think it's done really well here, and I do think about this from time to time. Okay, so the next one is Smithy by Amanda Desiree. This has a very unique premise. It takes place in the 1970s, and it is about researchers who are trying to train a chimpanzee American Sign Language so that they can communicate with humans. But they decide to run this program in a kind of a rundown mansion because it's cheap. But there is something else going on with this mansion, which is that it's haunted. And this chimpanzee is kind of like the conduit between one and the other. The idea of an animal communicating to me that there is some kind of presence, that's spooky. And we're not really that far off from that, because I don't know if you've seen these videos of dogs and cats who are learning to speak using buttons, and each button has a word, and they learn sort of what that word is, like outside, or, you know, sad or hungry or whatever. But their vocabularies can get really large, like really interesting. And they are able to string together words to make some basic sentences. So we're probably not that far away from it, but this mansion also in the story is like massive. It is massive, it's huge. and it has wings and it has like 70 rooms and like all that kind of stuff. And there are times as the reader when you're reading these letters and these documents, because that is the way that it's written, you're like, oh, why? Oh my God, this is a problem. You know, everything that's happening. And you feel really trapped in this house. So I do visit this house on occasion. The apartment. Now, this was an interesting pick for me in the sense where I can't even remember now like what it was that made me go, oh, I should check this book out. It was probably the cover, to be honest. But I wasn't really sure, like, is it a supernatural story? Is it a horror story? I felt like I didn't really know for sure. So I held back on this book for a little while, but once I started reading it, like all of these books I'm showing you, I binged it. Like, I just couldn't stop reading it. This book has a perfect, just a picture, perfect image of how relationships can deteriorate. And it's definitely distressing to read, you know, because you kind of know why it's happening. You see all the factors, but the people who are involved, you know, they don't see it because they're really clouded by their own emotions. So being able to observe that, you know, is really interesting. So this story is about a couple who are having some marriage problems. And they decide to go to Paris because this is where lovers go and this is where you go to rekindle, you know, and have a romantic time. So they go there hoping to just have fun together. They end up renting some kind of Airbnb situation, and it is a fucking nightmare. It is, wow. Like, the description of it was horrible. And I don't really rent Airbnbs, but I did one time get a hotel room that was so, it was so thickly, I don't even know what, it smelled like 10,000 cigarettes. The carpet, I hope it was the carpet, was so stained. I was sure that people had been shot, killed, and dismembered there. It was the most disgusting room I had ever seen in my life. And I remember the name of this hotel, and it was called The Unicorn. And it was not a unicorn at all. It was awful. And the house or the apartment that they rent, it's sort of similar. It's like really dark, really dingy. Everything is dirty. Everything is grimy. Everything just looks like it probably has bugs on it. And this is not the kind of vacation that they wanted. And what's also weird is there's like nobody else around. No one there. It's just them, it seems. But one of, I think, the most powerful moments is like when this couple begins to realize that there's something weird about this apartment and they don't want to stay there anymore. So now on their vacation, they're having to kind of like just stay on the streets of Paris just to escape this place. And they're not sleeping. There's a lot of things that happen that restrict a lot of their resources. They have nowhere to go, and you know, their mental state is crumbling. Like, I've had these moments, you know, where you go on a road trip with someone and it just goes wrong and you got to be together for like, I don't know, a couple more days or so, and you know it's gonna be hell. So the next 4 books I'm gonna talk about are like the best reads that I had of the year. Like, best of the best, super fantastic, like just really amazing to me. Just, you know, kind of just touched me in a certain way. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with one I'm sure that you will be like, oh yeah, obviously. Exquisite Corpse. A lot of totally unforgettable. I mean, just gruesome and gory and sad and troubling, heartbreaking, just a lot of things in here that are troubling and, you know, they hurt to read, but it's beautiful too. Like, the way that it's written is just, it's almost a crime to write such a topic so beautifully. You know, it is really fantastic. And I think there's a lot of death scenes, a lot of murder scenes in here, a lot of acts in the acts of murder that I will never forget. There is a character in here named Tran who, you know, all you want to do is protect this character, and you can't. And it's just such a helpless feeling, and I think that'll always live with me. This story is about two serial killers, one from the UK, one from the United States. They end up meeting in some kind of horrible, awful kismet situation, and they become lovers. They become colleagues, in a sense. They are each other's soulmate, and that takes place in New Orleans. And there are people that they meet, people that they know, that kind of get caught up in their world. The next one is The Worm and His Kings. This is a really beautiful cosmic horror story that's about love and fate and identity and the cosmos. This book is really, really short. It's a novella. It's not a book. It's a novella. But I think what it achieves is really spectacular, because, I mean, we're learning about the story about this woman who is homeless, and she's looking for her girlfriend who disappeared. And this is her whole entire focus. Like, she's like, I have to find her. So we start out with this kind of simple story, simple in the sense of like, we have someone who's trying to find somebody. And it just, it gets to be so big, like so large. I think it takes a very talented author to tell a story of this magnitude, because it begins on Earth, you know, like between two humans, and it transcends into something completely otherworldly. When we think of existence, we think about how small humans really are, how small planet Earth really is compared to the rest of the galaxies. Like, we know how small we are, how insignificant we are. And that is demonstrated here. This is the type of book that has an ending that is resolved. And you do get a lot of your answers. You do get a lot of your questions answered. It shows you a lot. It does show you a lot, but it 100% works. A lot of the time, I don't think that works, you know, because sometimes authors will treat readers like they need to have their hand held, you know, for every single, you know, description or idea or concept or something. And this doesn't do that for you. It doesn't hold your hand. This story takes place mainly in tunnels under New York City. And I really like tunnels because the visibility issue is, you know, it's just something that makes the situation more tense and more anxious. You don't know where you're going. Sound sounds like it could be coming around the corner, but, you know, maybe it's somewhere else. As a human, we're not attuned to being in subterranean situations. And in these tunnels, there is a creature, and it has this really cool name. It's called Greyhill. And it's in the tunnels. We don't know what it's doing, why it's there, what its purpose is. It just sounds really, really scary. So this idea of this thing called Greyhill coming out of the darkness and finding you, it's horrifying. And it does use sound, you know, like some type of echolocation. So that is creepy. I don't want to hear that in the tunnels. And these next two, you know that I never shut up about them. I'm always talking about them. But Maggie's Grave by David Sodergren, you know that I love Maggie. This story is about some teenagers who accidentally awaken an ancient witch, and she comes after them, hunting them down like rabbits. I loved Maggie because she was a beast. She was a true harpy. She was just like, I'm gonna come for you. I'm gonna rip your face off. I might even rip off some of your genitals. And I'm not even gonna blink when I do it. The other thing I liked about this story was the town itself. This town is kind of special because it's actually like half empty. Most people have been leaving and moving away. And so the town, there's all these houses that are empty. So there's a lot of people who just go from house to house and just sleep in different houses, you know, which sounds kind of interesting and cool to me. I kind of dig that a little bit. So this town is dying and you have a monster on the loose. We also have, oh, I just remembered another scene in this book. There is a, I don't even know, would this be a spoiler? I'm just gonna tell you. There's an orgy in here that, hilarious, gross, gory, bloody, writhing, just surprising and shocking stuff going on there. That was fun. I really like that. I think that's what I loved about this book the most. It was so fun. It was really fun. Like, I just had so much fun reading it. And my top read for this year, it's Playing Children. I know, I've been talking about this book so much this year, so much, but it was really a perfect read for me. It was supernatural and it had a lot of supernatural activity. Instead of the supernatural aspects trying to be vague or, you know, maybe a little bit, I don't know, like in the background or something, like, is it there? Is it not there? This is really in your face. And while getting to know the characters and the spaces and all that type of stuff, there are like little hints like written throughout the book that is sort of like, it's kind of telling you, it's like, there's something wrong here. I don't think this place is real, or I don't think this is happening, or I don't think that person exists, or, you know, whatever. It's giving you a little bit of hinting. And in this one, the building itself sort of sounds like it has its own thing going on. Like the building itself does its own thing. It's sort of alive in its own way. And you can't really trust the building too much. The story is about a man named Miles. He's looking for his nephew, even though his nephew is supposed to be dead and buried. But somehow, supposedly, he is not. So he goes to this location where supposedly Miles is supposed to be, basically to prove that this is nonsense and that his nephew is dead and buried in the cemetery, but instead finds something completely different, which is a building that is an orphanage that is supposed to be shut down, but is not. What I really liked about Miles's character and what Michael Schutz did was that he weaved in Michael's relationship with his boyfriend, who they had just broken up like not too long ago, but he still has all of these issues with the relationship with his ex-boyfriend and all of the insecurities, all of these shortcomings that Miles has or thinks he has from this relationship play into him and this orphanage. Sometimes it was really funny. Sometimes it was, you know, really sad. Miles just felt like 100% real. Like he just felt like a real person. And he's not a hero. You know, he's trying to do what he thinks is right and he's trying to make best decisions, but he's not a hero. Like, I appreciated that because sometimes I feel like I read a lot of stories where the main character is like going to save the day. But in this case, it's like things play out the way they play out, but they made sense and it was tough, it was brutal. The scene that sticks out to my mind so often with this book, and this is not a spoiler because it's pretty early on in the book, but Miles arrives at the orphanage and he is curious about this building. He opens up one of the doors. It's pretty dark in there, but he can tell that this room has bathtubs, like a bunch of bathtubs. Obviously, like it was either a room for people to bathe or it was for some kind of therapy, which is what he thinks it is. And while he's inspecting this room, he begins to see these very small, wispy things coming out of the bathtubs and behind the bathtubs and coming towards him. And they are obviously children. This scene is so cool. Like, I love it. It made me think a little bit about the orphanage. If you've ever seen that movie, it kind of felt like that kind of vibe for me. So then when that happened, I was like, what is the story with this place? I have to know. So this is, I think I can safely say this is my favorite read of the year. So these were my top reads for 2021. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Please like and comment down below. I would appreciate that so much. And if you would like more of these videos on a weekly basis, please subscribe. I was editing and realized that I didn't do my sign off, so I wanted to add this in here. Please take care of yourselves, watch out for each other, and I will talk to you next time.